Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The program will begin in a few minutes. Please begin to take your seats. Again, the program will begin in a few minutes. Please begin to take your seats.
Good morning. My name is Tim Hartman. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Government Executive Media Group, and I wanted to welcome everybody to this morning's event. Today's event is called GovExec Live, Modernizing HR for the 21st Century Workforce. I want to thank everyone for joining us here in DC and those of you on the live stream at home, or at work, as it is, for participating in the event today. This event is the 5th event in the GovExec Live series, and we're looking forward to sitting today with today's federal leaders who are leading a lot of change and transformation in the workforce and workforce modernization and technology arena. Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the changes that are coming at the different agencies that oversee HR, some of the technologies that can be implemented to help modernize the platforms that we use to manage human capital, using data to guide workforce planning, and the evolution of hiring practices at the federal agencies. Before we get started with the program, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First is just so we have everyone's full attention, if you could silence your cell phones, that would be great. And we also have a lot of people on the live stream and people here. We'd like you to participate in social media by tweeting out your thoughts and comments throughout the event using the hashtag GovExecLive, hashtag GovExecLive right there on the screen. I'd now like to take a moment to thank Grant Thornton for underwriting this morning's program and the entire event series. Grant Thornton's been a great partner of Government Executive over the years, over many years now, underwriting many of the different events and digital projects that we've done around workforce and agency transformation. And without their support, these programs just wouldn't be possible. So I want to give them a shout out as well. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our first conversation of the morning. Please join me in welcoming Jerry Leach, who's the Director of Human Capital Analytics and Technology for the Internal Revenue Service, Lindsay Willis, who's the Chief of the HR Systems Management Division at United States Agency for International Development, and our moderator today, who is Aaron Boyd, who's the Senior Editor for Technology and Events at NextGov. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning as we kick off here. Always nice to be the first to go. Everybody's, at least starting to get caffeinated. They're not quite cranky yet. It's like going first. So as we get started here, I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. But the goal of this panel is to do two things. One, talk about the platforms that are underlying all of the HR systems that are throughout government today. And how are we going to bring those forward so that as we're modernizing the workforce, we're also modernizing the tools that enable that workforce. And as we do so, we're going to set the table for a lot of the rest of the discussion that's going to be happening today. So first off, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves. We'll just go down the line here. Jerry, who are you and why are you here?
My name is Jerry Leach. I've been with IRS for about 28 years. I forget to look these days. It gets scarier by the number. I have been mostly in the HR arena, HRIT, a lot of the systems that we have. I've had a hand in them at some point in time. I'm now, as Aaron has said, Director of Human Capital Analytics and Technology, where we're looking toward a single source for data and technology to be able to do better data information sharing, data gathering, and data reporting.
Great. Lizzie?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsay Willis. I'm the Chief of the HR Systems Management Division at USAID. I've been there about 10 years in HRIT the entire time. And we embarked on our HR transformation journey in 2015, and I'm going to tell you a lot about that today. We are working to modernize our platforms so that we can be more efficient and provide better customer service to all of our employees worldwide.
So Lizzie, let's start there. Let's talk about that platform that you've been working on. You mentioned back in 2015, you started this journey. What was the kickoff?
We did a current state assessment of our HR operations, and we got a lot of feedback from our employees in 4 main areas where we had critical pain points. It was customer service, policy and process, tools and technology, and talent and culture. And we heard things like HR isn't serving our needs. We get different answers no matter who we talk to. We probably don't have the right technology. So that's really what was the kickoff to building a new platform so that we could serve our customers better.
Did you all go out and look for that feedback? Was it just a normal, like a viewpoint survey, or were you looking at your systems and saying, we know that these probably aren't where they need to be, let's see what the people think?
It was a little bit of both. We had several assessments throughout the years, actually, but we had never put a lot of resources into implementation. So we knew we had pain points. So this was just sort of memorializing those again so that we could actually do something about it.
So where are you right now in that journey?
We are 2.5 years in to a 5-year strategy.
Okay. So what's out there? Are you still in the development phase? Do you have a MVP out there? Where are you at?
So we launched our first major platform about a year ago. It was May of 2018. It's called Launchpad. It's our employee profile, our employee portal, and we've been able to automate several processes through 4 releases over the last year. We plan to do 3 to 4 every year throughout the rest of the strategy.
Excellent. So Jerry, let's talk about the platform you've been working on. What was the state of your HR platform when you started out, and what was the impetus to change?
So very similar to what Lindsay just described, we have had 20-year-old processes, 20-year-old systems, a lot of homegrown work. That's at IRS. In addition to Department of Treasury-wide, there are multitudes of systems to do talent management, employee training, employee hiring, employee onboarding. So about 5 years ago, the Chief Human Capital Officer at Treasury made a decision and made a pitch to the entire human capital world at Treasury to invest in an entire platform, start fresh, nothing on the table, work with the requirements to come up with what can we do for an integrated approach. So Treasury went and awarded to SAP, an integrated talent management system, which incorporates learning, performance, succession planning, and workforce planning. Now, from our area, we currently run about 25 to 27 different systems, SharePoint databases that support all of these pieces. So the impetus on our side, we've already been using SuccessFactors, which is the predecessor of the learning side in SAP. We've been using that for years, and Treasury was using that as well. So that's the upgrade piece. That's the easy part. The next step is the culture change that we have to work not only with the human capital side, with our business partners, our business units, which we have about 10, 60% of or 60-70% of the IRS. How do they operate on a performance basis, a planning basis, a succession basis, and to get the data to come across? It's easy to put in new applications. The term integrated is really where we are challenged to try to figure that out. I have wonderful talks with Treasury, who I spent 1.5 years as we were putting this in, supporting them, how that integrated piece flows through SAP ITM is going to be the real piece that makes this the challenge that we've not seen before. This is bleeding edge inside the government. It's done on the outside, but of course we find unique ways to do business, so that's what we're trying to overcome.
So when you say integrated, what are you integrating? Is it you mentioned the data, so you're taking different data sets and bringing those in. Are you integrating across IRS, across Treasury, across multiple departments? What's getting pulled together?
Well, from an IRS perspective, it is integration of the business across. So as business units, we on a regular basis, we have about 80,000 employees. During filing season, we have 100,000 employees. We actually will bring in that many to support our filing season efforts. To change the way we we review employees, we support employees, we plan employees. That's been done for years a certain way, and that's the uniqueness that has to be incorporated into whatever process we come in. So it's one thing just to plug in a new app and be able to utilize the data and the information that's shared, but how does that feed into the other parts of the organization, like data reporting, workforce planning, skills gaps assessments? So what do we go hire? Where should we be hiring? And should we be hiring at a business unit approach or a IRS approach? Then you get to the Treasury, the wonderful data calls, if you will, and how those information, how do we pull that information up so Treasury can do its work? So we can be a little bit more streamlined around Treasury and trying to report up what we're able to do, knowing what skill sets we do have so we can share resources across as well.
Excellent. And I do want to come back to that data piece and talk about how platforms can help with that. But first, I noticed something interesting in both of your introductions there. You both mentioned that this kind of started 5 years ago. Is that just coincidence, or did something happen around 5 years ago in the HR community where everyone said, we need new platforms?
I think it was really our employees were expecting something different. With everything else going on in this world, people use Uber, they use TurboTax, they use Amazon to buy everything. They were expecting a similar experience with HR, and they weren't getting it.
Yeah, we similar path for us. We, as budgets got lean over the last few years, what's the first thing that gets cut? Training. The next thing that gets cut is support for HR. So, which I'm not complaining. What we did was try to keep things going the best that we could. The Chief Human Capital Officer at Treasury made a bold decision that we are going to do this from a Treasury-wide perspective, little in advance of the shared service concept that GSA just put out a week or two ago. So the concept of how do we get to that shared service platform is needed, and made the investment. The nice part about it is, as IRS is now a little bit healthier, a little bit beyond some of the troubles that we've gone through with funding and with the Hill, is that our new commissioner actually made a comment, it's time to paint the barn. Sometimes you have to go back and reinvest. So they are investing in us, human capital-wise, not only to develop strategies around career pathing for our employees, but our new human capital officer has also come in investing in our people. We're developing academies that actually can tie into the tool that this is going to be on to support all of this going on. So the timing is just perfect.
Yeah, when we were talking before the session, you mentioned that IRS has across government, there's definitely a problem with retention and getting new people into government, right? IRS, the numbers you had mentioned were pretty scary.
Actually, we are at, that's why I have a cheat sheet. We have, our average age is 50 years old. Human capital, the average age is 51. The retirement eligibility as of today is 24 to 25% around IRS. The average number of employees under age 30, IRS-wide, 770. That's the problem that we run into. In fact, I just provided a stat for the Human Capital Officer. 25 and under, we have like 230 people. So that has to change.
Less than 1% of your staff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the idea, and what we want to do is, as we bring these folks in, I mean, they're used to online learning, they're used to doing things remotely. If we don't modernize the way we support our employees now, they're going to come in and say, why am I doing this? You can do this so much better and faster, and they'll go find those other opportunities. So we have to improve ourselves, first of all, to get better, and that over the next 5 years will be our major strategy. In fact, human capital will be looking at different ways to do itself at IRS in a different way.
And Lindsay, at USAID, what's your picture look like staffing-wise and hiring and retention? And what is HR's role in fixing those issues?
Well, on the HR side, due to attrition and a hiring freeze, we've lost 50% of our processing staff over the last 4 years, and a third of our HR staff overall in the last 2 years. So we are using technology to fill the gap as much as possible so we can be more efficient and focus on the high value work, because we're not going to be able to bring back that 50% of our transactional staff, nor should we. We want to focus on being able to attract and retain staff. So we are really still recovering from a hiring freeze and attrition, but we have similar challenges with people that are eligible for retirement and could walk out the door any day.
So continuing with you, Lindsay, where do the platforms come into that? How can you, speaking both from the HR side, your people, how you empower them using platforms, but also just agency-wide, what does having an updated HR platform do to fix some of those issues?
So as part of our strategy, we developed a new HR operating model, which has a tiered structure, so that we have a tier 0, which is self-service, which employees, again, are used to using with things like Uber and TurboTax. Then we have a tier 1, which is our call center that can answer our basic questions and do basic transactions. And then tier 2 and tier 3 to do more complex actions. Now our platform is helping to facilitate that. So we have our intake coming through the self-service employee portal. It's our one-stop shop for all of the HR needs. So it could be something as simple as asking a question or requesting a personnel action, or even doing their bidding on their next assignment, or putting in their performance forms for the year. So we've really used that platform as the intake. And then we've built workflow into it. We did a lot of process redesign before we did this, of course, to make sure that we were building something that would be efficient for us and met our needs. And then that workflow helps us track all of those actions throughout the life cycle. We're able to fire off tasks simultaneously instead of having to wait for a piece of paper to travel between department. So we've really been able to become more efficient.
How about at IRS? Why do you need, beyond just we can't do everything with paper anymore, what does a platform give you that just having an HR shop doesn't?
Lindsay just described that tier approach is fantastic. We have to get more toward a self-service model where employees can help themselves. There are some required things that have to push out, a new tax law, a new item that we push out to the revenue folk, a new software package in the IT community that needs to be invoked. But we want employees to be able to have the opportunity to develop themselves, to see what the next path is that they want to go to. If I am an administrative assistant, I want to become a revenue person. What accounting do I have to take? What do I have to get to do that? And we want, through our integrated talent management system, those career paths will be defined. Those development plans can drop right into my area, so I can work with my manager quickly on what has to happen. As I log in the morning, it's that opening screen that says, here are some training opportunities that you need to go to, or an online seminar. With the tax law change that came last year, we spent all year long sharing with employees things about making sure your paycheck is the right, do you have the right withholding going on? So those seminars could be online.
Are you telling us that people who work at the IRS don't necessarily understand how to do their own taxes?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the interpretation of tax law is open to every individual, and everyone has a responsibility to meet their tax obligation. The concept, though, is that don't get caught. Make sure you have, these are the tools you can use, online tax tools to help you. How do you get that out to the community without just sending a memo or email out? Because what do we get, 2-3 emails a day, so it's easy to work them? So we have to find ways to keep our employees engaged and involved and understanding what are the hot issues of the day that the agency is working, as well as how do I develop myself for future work.
And I could see a platform, like you mentioned, helping you schedule those things and push those things out and the like. What, within all of the things that you have to do as an HR shop, where can you automate? Where can, you mentioned some self-serve stuff, and where do you still need a person in the loop?
We absolutely need the liaison role, as you will, sort of a consultant role that we're still doing a little bit of classroom management. Let's get in a campus, let's get these 20 people into the classroom at this time. It's difficult to have that much resource devoted to that these days. If we can get to an online scheduling system and I don't want to say hold employees accountable to the level of you will. It's having that opportunity to say, these are the classes that you need to attend, these are your options, go sign up and work that. But that's a culture change. How we manage the training process, how we manage the performance process, try to get the employee base engaged in the process as opposed to putting it on a manager for burden perspective to push that out. Try to work with the partnership of the employees that it's your career, how can you help yourself do what you need to do?
Right. So what can you automate, and where do we still need people?
So we're looking to automate a lot of our basic transactions, again, since we've lost so much of our transactional staff. So we're trying to automate on both the employee side and the HR side. So for example, if an employee experiences a name change, before we had any automation at USAID, that was a really painful process where people filled out forms providing information that we already had in HR. The form probably got lost, then it had to be resubmitted again, and then somebody had to take that information in HR, put it on an SF-52, and then go and code it in the HR system. As you can see, very, very time consuming. So what we've done is we've created a questionnaire for the employee to fill out the information that we need to process the name change. We don't need to know their name today. We already know that. Their social security number, we already know that. We only need to know what's your new name, why are you changing it, when are you changing it, and what's your proof. So we can collect that information very quickly. We populate an SF-52 on the back end, and then HR can process that action. So today, somebody actually takes that information and keys it into our HRIS. But we are looking to do a pilot on robotics this summer where a bot will take that information from the back end of our portal and input it into our HRIS, and then shoot out tasks to make sure that it applied to the database fine, and then we're good to go, close out the ticket. And we've basically just made this a second-long transaction instead of hours, days, months. So there's portions of that where HR would have to approve that. So that's where they can add value. But actually doing the data entry is not adding any value. So that's what we're trying to do.
With our systems, and a lot of them don't talk to each other, that's robotics too, is the new buzzword I think we're all looking at. And we see lots of great opportunities in just having some of those systems that we actually have to take data from one and input to the other. We're looking to put robotics into the short-term fixes to have data flow through smoother, especially in some of the systems that's not part of ITM, our hiring systems and our support systems for other HR things not ITM related.
Interesting. So when we talk about where we still need people, one of the things I can think of is evaluations, right? Your annual eval. When we were talking before, you had mentioned an interesting data point for you all of how this is changing with the introduction of new platforms.
Yes, so we completely redesigned our performance management system for our foreign service employees. And it used to be that we would basically halt all operations for an entire month to write performance evaluations. And
I heard some yeps in the crowd.
Yeah. Not a very good use of everybody's time. So we redesigned the process and then built it into our tool. So we now have a quarterly conversation, which is basically the rating official and the employee sitting down quarterly, writing down a few notes and challenges and plans for the next quarter. And then both the employee and the rating official check the box that the conversation occurred, and they're good to go. And then HR also has that data immediately. Before we did this, we had only paper processes, and the only data we had was what we compiled on a spreadsheet. Again, not very useful. So we have the quarterly conversations, and then we changed to a pass-fail for the annual performance evaluation. So instead of pages upon pages of writing, it's pass-fail. So we have a couple other forms that we've incorporated to get some more narrative when we need it, but only for the instance